Yeah, roughly $300 billion in austerity set to hit us this year, just based on previous. I mean, there was almost $2 trillion in spending cuts that were agreed to last year by Congress. Now, that was $2 trillion spread out over the next 10 years, so a couple $100 billion of that is going to hit us this year. So we are entering an era of austerity more severe than, at least in terms, not necessarily in terms of GDP, but in terms of aggregate dollars, certainly, more severe than any of the countries of Europe. And what has austerity done to Greece? Wiped them out. What did it do to Spain? Wiped them out. What did it do to the UK? They're in a double-dip recession. What did it do to Ireland? Wiped them out. Portugal wiped them out. So you look at the countries that have embraced austerity, they're in big trouble. You look at the countries that said no to austerity, Sweden, Switzerland, Denmark, France, Germany, Iceland, Denmark. I think I listed Denmark. Norway. They're doing fine, thank you very much. The countries that have embraced the opposite of austerity, that have said, we're not even going to talk about austerity. Instead, we're going to give everybody in the country free health care. China did that last year. We're going to build a national infrastructure. We're going to build thousands of miles of 300-mile-an-hour rail, high-speed rail. State-of-the-art, best in the world, maglev trains. Again, China. We're going to create an infrastructure, high-speed internet, high-speed broadband, electric power. We're going to lead the world in the production and use of solar power. China. Not us. I mean, it used to be the United States that did these things. We're going to put a man on the moon in 10 years. We did. We're going to defend freedom and liberty around the world, fight World War I and World War II. Still not sure why we fought World War I, but World War II, we knew who Hitler was. And we don't so much do that anymore. And it's not that I'm saying that we should have wars, but the point is that we knew how to mobilize when we needed to do something. We knew how to pull together when we needed to do something. We used to know in the United States how to build things, how to build the interstate highway system. Dwight Eisenhower did it. How to build highways, how to build schools, how to build hospitals, how to develop new technologies, how to create free education, how to build an intellectual infrastructure. Right up until the Reagan administration, most people went to college relatively cheaper for free. They could work their way through college at a minimum wage job. Through college, right up until the 80s. When Ronald Reagan came into office, more than 80% of the cost of higher education as a national average. Now, it was 100% in California. It was, probably 60% in Mississippi. But the national average was around 80%, was paid for by federal and state and local money. And roughly 20% of the cost of education was paid for by tuition. And we had been doing that for decades, arguably for centuries. And then came Reagan and, Bill Bennett as the head of the Department of Education, and this whole, let's have for-profit schools and let's start paying, it's just, and it went nuts. And then, let's say that student loans can't be used for bankruptcy. In other words, you can't get away from them. The banks would love to lend you that. Right? Something you can never declare bankruptcy on. Their risk is zero or close to zero. And they can try and they can borrow from the federal government right now at 0.25%, and they can lend to students at 6-7%. And they can make some serious money. So what happens? The cost of education explodes. Now, state and federal spending, it's flipped. State and federal spending now represents a little less than 30%. It's not the 20%, but it's a little less than 30%. It's in the high 20s. And tuition represents in the neighborhood of 70% of the total cost of education. So we have flipped it upside down in just 32 years. And much of that flip happened in the 80s and mid-90s, although it's continuing. It's a trend that's continuing. So you add that to this explosion of the billionaire class, and it's like, is this really the country we want, where we can't afford to educate our kids because the billionaires are taking all the money, the welfare queens like Bill Gates, and whatnot, they're taking all the money and using laws like copyright and patent laws and so-called free trade laws to be and the capital gains loophole to take billions and billions of dollars out of their companies and stash it in Swiss bank accounts. I mean, how many did Mitt Romney have in the Caymans? And these, and then, they hire Frank Luntz and he says, oh yeah, let's call these people the job creators. This is like when the Walton heirs, the 5 Walton heirs who own more wealth than 30% of Americans. The bottom 30% of Americans own less than 5 Walton heirs. Sam Walton, Walmart. These are not people who earned their income, they inherited it or earned their wealth. And, they funded this campaign secretly. It took us almost a decade to discover that they had paid for it. A multi-million-dollar campaign over a number of years to rebrand the estate tax, what I call the Paris Hilton tax, as and what sometimes was called typically it was called the estate tax or the inheritance tax sometimes, to rebrand it as the so-called death tax. It's not a tax on death. It's a tax on money that's transferred after somebody has died. But it's really a tax on the transfer of assets, which we do all the time. You go into a store and you buy a candy bar, it's a transfer of assets. And you pay a sales tax. You buy a car, you pay a tax. You buy a house, you pay a tax. I mean, hand somebody a bunch of money, you pay a tax on it. So I'm suggesting, and Diana is British. She would know that in the UK, actually I don't think they do anymore, but they used to have, and they do in many European countries, a wealth tax. Every year, part of your wealth, you pay the taxes.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
So I'm suggesting we should have a wealth tax. It shouldn't kick in until $1 billion, and after that it should be 100%. We've discussed this before. What do you think?